and all ideas that is you have for this wonderful country of ours, Mother Ghana, speaking to the entire nation. This is GBC's Presidential Encounter coming to you live from Broadcasting House here in Accra, Kanda. My name is George Sappo.
And my name is Doreen. And for today, as we continue with our pre-election engagement, we host a veteran politician. Well, before we get to meet him, let me remind you of EC's guidelines as well as the GJ's rules on election coverage, which emphasize accuracy, balance, and fairness.
All right. So, as usual, what we'll do for you, since we've been doing this for the past 1 week, we'll get our guest seated. He'll tell us everything that he's got to tell us concerning his plans for this good country of ours. And then after that, the audience will also have their session to ask questions, not forgetting the GJ is policy and guidelines to ensure there's free, there's fair coverage, and ensure that whatever you get from the media is authentic and there's no fake news.
For now, let me remind you that we are live on GTV and GBC News. You're also live on all our 18 district and regional FM stations across the country. We're also streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, as well as all our social media platforms, meaning we are streaming live across the world.
All right. Like we do for you, we'll get to know exactly who our guest is by getting to know everything about him in his profile. So let's take a look at his profile, after which we'll introduce him to join us here.
Alan John Kwadwo Kyerematen was born on October 3, 1955 to the late Dr. Alexander Ataya Kyerematen from Patasi, Kumasi, and Victoria Kyerematen, née Welsing from Elmina College, and a mentor to his father when he was a student at the school in the 1930s. At the record age of 9 years, Alan John Kyerematen entered Adisadel College, the all-boys Anglican boarding school in Cape Coast, for his secondary education, and thereafter attended the prestigious Kyerematen School for his 6th form education. He proceeded to the University of Ghana, Legon, for a bachelor's degree in economics. Mr. Kyerematen also holds a law degree LLB from the Ghana Law School at the same university, where he qualified as a barrister at law. He was called to the bar in Ghana and is a practicing attorney at law in Ghana. In addition, he is a Hubert Humphrey Fellow of the School of Management at the University of Minnesota, USA, having completed 1-year management studies under the Fulbright Fellowship Program at that institution. Alan John Kyerematen has had an extensive and successful professional career in both the private and public sector, spanning a period of over 24 years. He was a senior corporate executive with a subsidiary of Unilever International in Ghana. He also worked for a number of years as a principal consultant and head of public systems management with one of the leading management development institutions in Ghana, the Management Development and Productivity Institute, MDPI. In 1998, Alan Kyerematen was appointed by the UNDP as the first regional director of Enterprise Africa, which was an Africa-wide flagship initiative for the development and promotion of small and medium enterprises. In 1990, Alan Kyerematen was responsible for establishing and managing the Empretec program in Ghana, a leading business development program sponsored by the United Nations and Barclays Bank Limited. Mr. Kyerematen is a member of the Council of Governors of the British Executive Service Overseas, BESO, in the UK, and also a board member of other organizations in Ghana. In 1994, Mr. Kyerematen was listed by the Time magazine as one of the 100 global leaders for the new millennium, alongside Bill Gates of Microsoft Corporation, John F. Kennedy Jr., and others. Mr. Kyerematen was a young stalwart and key strategist of the New Patriotic Party, NPP, and a founding member since its inception in 1992. He has also served on the highest decision-making bodies of the NPP that shaped the party's strategic direction, both in opposition and in government, including NPP National Executive Committee, serving as a member for over 2 decades. Mr. Kyerematen was appointed Ghana's ambassador to the U.S. when the NPP came into office in 2001. As head of Ghana's diplomatic mission to the United States of America, he was considered the NPP government's top foreign envoy and performed with distinction over the 18-month duty tour, and his significant achievements include establishment of the U.S.-Ghana Economic Council, coordinating government's renegotiation of the Westel Agreement with Westel Wireless and Valco Agreement with Kaiser Aluminum Company, coordinating and implementation of the first investment forum in the United States to showcase the economic potential of each of the 10 regions of Ghana then, establishment of the first web-based Ghana Skills Bank, developed an Operation Save Your Schools program for Ghana residents in the United States to assist their alma mater primary middle schools. In 2003, Alan Kyerematen was appointed as the cabinet minister with responsibility for trade, industry, and the President's Special Initiatives PSI. In that capacity, he spearheaded the development and implementation of innovative programs which have become new strategic pillars of growth for the transformation of the Ghanaian economy. He was also the only trade minister from Africa to have been selected as a panelist on trade during the 2006 World Economic Trade Forum in Davos. As a Minister of Trade and Industry in Ghana, Alan Kyerematen played a key role in shaping Africa's trade policy agenda in the WTO multilateral negotiations and the EU-ACP Economic Partnership Agreement negotiations. He was chairman of the ECOWAS Council of Trade Ministers at the critical stages of launching the EU-ECOWAS EPA negotiations. He is married to Patricia Christabel Kyerematen, 2 children, Alexander and Victor Kyerematen. Mr. Kyerematen made an attempt at the leadership of the New Patriotic Party in 2007, capturing 32.3% of votes cast. He was first runner-up to Nana Addo Dankwa Kwadwo, who gained 47.96% of votes cast. He made a second attempt in 2010, where he placed second to Nana Kwadwo. On Wednesday, 11 January 2023, Alan Kyerematen officially announced his intention to contest the NPP's Flagbearership and underwent a successful vetting process, placing third with 95 votes, representing 10.29% of total votes cast, qualifying him for the New Patriotic Party's presidential primaries in November. However, he took to social media on 5th of September to announce his decision to resign from contesting his party's National Delegate Congress, which was slated for November 4, 2023. On 25th of September 2023, Alan Kyerematen quit the NPP and decided to contest 2024 general election as an independent candidate. This led to the formation of the Movement for Change with the monarch butterfly as its brand logo. The logo politically symbolizes change and transformation, hope and positivity. It also communicates strength, endurance, spirituality and trust, which are key traits that Mr. Kyerematen cherishes as a political leader. In Akan, it is known as Afafanto. The brand motto of the movement is Ghana will rise again, which culminates to hope for the future of Ghana.
All right, so that's our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to welcome our guest for this evening, Alan Kyerematen. Let's put our hands together to welcome him. Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome. Make yourself comfortable. I hope you're well.
Well, I am.
Okay.
And how are you doing?
I'm well too. Thank you.
Good.
Is the cash still around?
Yes, indeed it is,
Okay.
but for a good purpose.
For a good purpose. But how's it been, campaigning and?
Well, it's gone very well for a number of reasons. First, because I'm an old horse in this game.
Yeah.
I've been around, and secondly, also, I have a compelling message that is speaking to the concerns and the desires of the majority of Ghanaians. And I find that by God's grace, naturally people love me. So wherever I go, it's been fantastic. But the beauty of it is that you can see that this is organic love. You remember, I've been a founding member of the NPP, and the NDC does the same thing. I mean, these are two giant parties, and typically the connection to people is not real.
Okay.
Because, for example, whether it's on the campaign field, the practice is to bring people, to a central place, of course, because they have the resources to do that. I go to the people. I've always been a grassroots and retail campaigner.
All right.
Even in the MPP, they know this.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good to know.
There's no village in Ghana where I'm not recognized either by face or by name.
Or by name.
You know.
Okay.
So,
All right. That's
so
good
I've been
to know.
around.
That's good to know. So our usual drill is that you have 20 minutes to talk to Ghanaians.
Very well.
After which I'll ask you some questions based on the things you've told Ghanaians, and then our audience here in the studio, made up of different sector of the population, will also ask you some questions, which is going to be the main aspect of this conversation. So we understand that you have to go to the podium. If you don't mind, we can actually go to the podium.
You didn't give me the opportunity to say hello to all our distinguished people.
Okay.
Good evening to you all. How are you doing?
Okay. All right. So now we can actually get to the podium there where you have the opportunity to
let
address.
me get... You know, when you've been in this game,
yes,
sometimes you keep to the text. Otherwise, you start running your mouth.
That's fair enough.
When you get used to microphones,
that's fair enough.
You become a different person.
Okay. So you have 20 minutes.
Okay.
And that's your camera, and it starts now.
Okay. Very well. Let me start first by commending the GBC and your sponsors for this great initiative of the presidential encounters, particularly because it's an opportunity to meet with stakeholders from various organizations and institutions. 70 to 80% of Ghanaians have given an indication that they do not intend to vote in the 2024 general elections for a number of reasons. One, the two dominant parties, the NDC and the MPP, after 32 years in power, have failed the country for a number of reasons. This is coming from the people. First, the economy is still in crisis. Two, there's a high level of unemployment. There is still doomsday, in spite of the different definitions that are being given to doomsday. Corruption is rife. Both parties have not been able to deal substantively with galamsey. And although there is free SHS, there's still a significant challenge because most parents are unable to finance the post-second cycle education for their wards. So that's the first reason why many Ghanaians are very reluctant to vote in this election. Number two, the two parties, the MPP and the NDC, have created very serious divisions in our country. Every single issue is being politicized, and a divided country cannot stand. Three, the duopoly has given rise to a winner-takes-all syndrome, which is not helping our country. Once a party comes into office and there's victory, what I would call the spoils of war, then is reserved for only those who belong to their party. Four, lack of continuity in government projects. It is amazing that you have governments refusing to continue projects that have been initiated by predecessor governments just because they have to start something new. In actual fact, it's part of why we have such a corrupt country. Because once you have the opportunity to start something new, then obviously, then there goes the beginning of 10% contracts. Five, most Ghanaians want to genuinely move beyond party manifestos to a national development plan. Because these party manifestos are full of promises. Six, there's a desire among Ghanaians to have a more inclusive and more representative government. Right now, governance is about politicians. People who leave school have absolutely no capacity for performance, and because they've decided that they chart the path of politics, all of a sudden they become big men. So we are actually now incubating a new class of politicians who feel that the shortest way of becoming rich is to get into politics. So that's a major problem for Ghanaians. Then, alongside with that, is the urge for a government of national unity, to bring all stakeholders, like we have here, together to be government and not just politicians. 7, the need for constitutional reforms to improve the quality of governance. See, the two dominant parties have been very reluctant to execute the kind of reforms that they themselves have created or have indicated they are committed to. Why? Because part of the reforms will reduce the powers of the executive, and they are not interested in giving that power up. So to a large extent, they'll go back and forth about these constitutional reforms, but as the Americans will say, it ain't gonna happen, because they have an interest in keeping those provisions in the Constitution intact. And then, last but not the least, Ghanaians feel that there's a need for a mindset and attitudinal change. We know ourselves that the lack of discipline, the lack of respect for a rule of law, lack of patriotism, these are things about Ghanaians which don't help us, for us to move forward. So Ghanaians generally are very frustrated. They are very frustrated because of some of these reasons that I've talked about. But the movement for change, which I have the honor and privilege of leading, has been established to address the reasons for change that I've just talked about. The movement to change, in reaction to these concerns, has come out with a great transformational plan, which is a new policy blueprint for Ghana's transformation, and will address many of the concerns that Ghanaians have. Now, the GTP has 5 main components or clusters. 1 is economic, 2, governance, 3, infrastructure, 4, social services, 5, natural resource management, and 6, attitudinal and mindset change. Let me start with the economic cluster. Under the economic cluster, the GTP proposes far-reaching macroeconomic policy interventions that will stabilize, first, the currency, control public expenditure, optimize revenue, reduce inflation, lower taxes and duties, lower interest rates, achieve debt sustainability, increase financing to SMEs, promote financial inclusion, and introduce a new regime for financing the cocoa sector, which is very, very important. In addition to these macroeconomic policies, the GTP proposes a comprehensive program for job creation by boosting the productive sectors of our economy through industrialization and a new agricultural revolution, as well as tourism. Now, under the governance cluster, the GTP focuses primarily on a new policy of zero tolerance for corruption. First, through leadership by example. Secondly, by introducing new legislation and also enforcing existing ones. Introducing the concept of an anti-corruption czar, which is an anti-corruption overlord, who have prosecutorial authority, which is independent of the Attorney General. What we have now, the OSP basically derives its authority to prosecute from the Attorney General by the Constitution. So obviously you have to understand that it's very difficult for the OSP to get into the bowels of corruption, and we cannot blame. The cluster also deals with constitutional reforms that will deepen local government administration. What we call decentralization here is not decentralization. And also, it has provisions that will limit the powers of the executive and the presidency, because the president has too much powers in this country. Of course, I'm contesting to become president, but I want to reduce my powers even before I become president. And to do that, we are proposing a new second chamber of parliament. Now, this chamber will be composed of representatives of all major stakeholder bodies. We may end up finding that this is our second chamber when Alam becomes president, because I see that you're all, you're representing, and this will include traditional authorities, religious leaders, the youth, women, the PWDs, the business community, labor unions, farmers and fishermen. You see, it's just like what we have here. Now, this new chamber will, among other things, be responsible for approving the nominations for the heads of all independent constitutional bodies. That is including the Electoral Commissioner, the Chief Justice and members of the Supreme Court, the heads of security agencies, of course, including the IGP, and the Commissioner for Charge, amongst others. How is it that the President appoints the Electoral Commissioner or the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, and you expect that you can have completely, the freedom to do whatever you want? Well, I have a different view. I don't even want to feel that I'm imposing directly or indirectly constraints on these independent heads of independent bodies to do their work. They are supposed to be independent bodies. Anyway, now, the constitutional reforms will also review provisions of Article 71 of the Constitution that deals with compensation and retirement benefits for selected public sector officials. For example, the payment of ex gratia and end of service benefits. There are people who have taught for 40 years, people who have served in the health sector for 25, 30 years. They go on retirement, and the pensions and the benefits that they get have no comparison to people who are in this category of Article 71. What is the basis for that? Because you've been a member of parliament, because you've been a minister of state? I don't think it is fair. And my constitutional reforms would review all these matters. Now, under the infrastructure cluster, the GTP introduces a new paradigm for infrastructure development, which will focus on government supporting the private, and I want you to note this, government supporting the private sector to finance infrastructure. Government will never have the capacity to mobilize revenue to build roads. And that's why it's never been possible. And it ain't gonna happen. Because if you go to the advanced countries, major airports, major highways are owned by the private sector. And they know where to find the money. So what government needs to do is to provide the kind of incentives and benefits to the private sector to go and find the money. You give them the concession, subject to government regulation. A private person to finance the construction of the airport is a security risk. When major international airports belong to private companies, and you are worried about security risk, and so you want to keep, that is where the corruption actually also becomes rife. Because to build these infrastructure projects, you know what happens. So it's very important that we start moving in that direction. In this cluster also, there's a proposal to mainstream digitization and digitalization, because they are two different things, throughout the public sector and the private sector. In this regard, my government will create 100,000 hotspots, free satellite internet connectivity. And remember this, free satellite internet connectivity. So it's not going to be constrained by our telecoms. And that's, I think, a major, this is proper digitalization. Yes. Now, in the areas of energy security, the GTP prioritizes the introduction, again, of private sector participation, first in the generation, transmission, and distribution of energy across the country, as well as some more aggressive transition to cleaner sources of energy. We've been talking about solar. We've been talking about wind power. We don't seem to ever get there. But there are even greener sources of energy now globally, which basically people are drawing to. There's hydrogen energy, and there's actually, you'll be surprised, nuclear energy. And for Ghana, the best option for us, nuclear energy, is what is called small modular reactors, SMRs. We have to understand what is happening in the world. This is where the world is moving to when you start talking about energy transition. Now, under the social services cluster, the GTP proposes improvements in the management and operationalization of the free SHS program. The free SHS program is a great policy, and I doubt whether any government will discontinue it. However, in order to improve the operationalization and the management of the free SHS, we have no choice but to do the following. The MPP is reluctant to do that, but I can guarantee that every serious government will continue it. But it has to be subject to review. And in this case, under the following criteria. 1, financial sustainability. Where are we going to find the money to sustain this? 2, infrastructure requirements. 3, curriculum development. We are talking about free SHS. What are we teaching them under the free SHS program? Is it helping them to transition into the world of work? It's very important. 4, capacity building for teachers and non-teaching staff. And last but not the least, transitioning these graduates into the world of work. For you to go to SHS free and come out of SHS and not to have a job, for me, is fundamentally flawed. And we have to find a solution to this. And for all of us as Ghanaian citizens, let's not be playing to this gallery of free SHS. So you are going to vote only because of free SHS without thinking about, so free SHS and after that what? That is where the focus should be. But if you are convinced that, this party has introduced free SHS, so you are voting for them, then it means that you are pleased with a situation where there's no provision for free SHS graduates to enter the job market. Then the GTP also prioritizes improvements in the quality and delivery of basic and pre-basic levels of education. We are talking about free SHS as if the basic and the pre-basic do not matter. In fact, they are as important as the SHS, and I'm sure that you would agree with me. In the health sector, the GTP proposes interventions in the area of health, first in the health infrastructure, then financing of healthcare, health service delivery, human capacity development, energy sector. You'll be amazed. There are over almost 14, 15 institutions in the energy sector. GNPC, Petroleum Commission, NPA, BOST. If we don't consolidate some of these institutions, it means government is just spending money for just keeping institutions alive. It's the same thing with the health sector, and it's very important that we look at this. Then, amongst the many other proposals in the health sector is the installation of 100,000 health screening booths. If it's too complicated for you to understand, just look at them as health screening kiosks. But a more elegant way is health screening booths. Now, these booths will be mounted at various vantage points in all communities around the country to provide screening for the early detection of lifestyle diseases such as diabetes, such as hypertension. Why is it that you just want to check your blood pressure and you have to go to Kolebu to do that? Does it make sense? It doesn't. Even to check your blood sugar. So these booths will be 100,000 of them located all around the country for the screening of these, I would say, health. And the beauty of this, is that these 100,000 booths will be owned and managed by SHS graduates or tertiary graduates. It means that already I'm creating 100,000 jobs. Already I'm creating 100,000 jobs by putting up these health kiosks. And if you are going to own one of these health kiosks, because remember, you own it on a work and pay basis. So you come out and then you sign up for one of these health kiosks. There'll be a blood pressure monitor, there'll be kits for malaria, for testing sugar and all these things. So almost you are building your own capacity. By the time you are aware, you move from the health kiosk or health booth. Now you start developing the capacity to enter into the health field full time. So it's very important, particularly for the youth. Now, the GTP also proposes the full integration of herbal and traditional medicine practices in all public health institutions. Whether we like it or not, the truth of the matter is that 70% of the Ghanaian population, they have no choice but to have access and use herbal medicine. Is that not correct? That's what happens. So we cannot ignore the practice of herbal medicine, but we have to structure this and mainstream it properly into our health care facilities, together with the mental health care delivery. Furthermore, and this is very interesting, in the health sector, I'm proposing the introduction of what we call the GP, General Practitioner Model, which is the only way you can bring quality health service to the doorstep of every Ghanaian. In the matured economies, every group of people in a community has what we call a general practitioner. That general practitioner is like your family doctor. And so they will come around and basically take care of you. And if there is some particular medical case that requires referral, then you would make the reference to Kwadwo or to Comfort. Also create a lot of opportunities for those who come out of medical school. And a general practitioner would have about 2 or 3 nurses working with them. So you can imagine that this is really going to blow up the entire health sector. Now, the GTP also proposes a 10-point plan for youth empowerment, including the development and operationalization of something very interesting, a digital employment platform that will create 3 million jobs during an Alam presidency within the first 1.5 years. And when I talk about proper digitalization, I've created my own tech platform, even before I became president, which would allow young people to go and put and log in their CVs and identify the type of jobs that they would like to have. That's if Alan becomes president. So within 1.5 years, this should already be operational. Because there are going to be so many jobs that is unbelievable. And I need to already program into my administration the people who are going to work in these sectors. And it's very important. Then, of course, there are policies in support of persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. Under the natural resource management cluster, the primary focus is on dealing with galamsey. If not for anything at all, the fact that the 2 dominant parties are saying that we should vote them back into power, then they will deal with galamsey. This alone should help Ghanaians make a decision, against the MPP and the NDC, because they have vested interest. They have vested interest in keeping the galamsey going. And so I would like to encourage you to look at my 10-point plan for galamsey. Another important policy intervention in the area of natural resource management is the introduction of new legislation that will significantly reduce the export of raw materials. And under an Alam presidency, I would ensure that there will be a minimum of 60% value addition before any raw material is exported. Before any raw material is exported from Ghana, there has to be at least minimum of 60% value addition by the year 2030. In addition, Article 257 of the 1992 Constitution will be amended to establish traditional authorities as co-trustees with the president in respect of the exploitation of mineral resources. It doesn't make sense for a traditional ruler, let's say a paramount chief, to sit in his community. Somebody comes with a piece of paper, a license from Minerals Commission, that they have given that piece of land to an individual to do exploration without the involvement of the traditional rulers. So that will all be. Then the last cluster of the GTP is on attitudinal and mindset change. And this is very dear to my heart. I'm saying that unless we respect the principles underpinning mindset change, all the nice things we are talking about will not happen. Number one, respect for law and order. 2, enforcement of discipline. 3, having a positive attitude to work. You are there to work. You are not favoring your employer. You are there to work. A passion for excellence and meritocracy, and also inculcating the spirit of patriotism and national consciousness. Now, going around the country, there is no doubt that many Ghanaians genuinely believe that Alan Kyerematen is a right alternative to the two dominant parties. There's no doubt about that. And he's the best person to lead this country on the basis of 1, his vision, 2, his competence, 3, his capacity for action, 4, integrity, and then last but not the least, charisma. However, the challenge is that many Ghanaians keep on asking, see, they are genuinely afraid that, they want Alan, but they are genuinely afraid. Is he going to win? Or am I going to waste my vote? And this concern is arising out of the fact that there is some very serious negative propaganda championed by the two parties going around the country. Oh, Alan is a fine man. So, it doesn't make sense. The truth of the matter is that if indeed the majority of Ghanaians want change, and Alan represents change, then if you vote for Alan, he or she votes for Alan, everybody is voting for Alan because they want change, then Alan will become president. This is simple logic. They are confusing you. They will always tell Alan is the best person. But there's nothing like that. You vote. Let the other person vote. Let you vote. Alan will become president, and the change will come. Ladies and gentlemen, even at the risk of sounding boastful, and I need to conclude, I would like to emphasize that I have a distinguished record of service, both in the public and private sectors, in Ghana and internationally. In 1994, when Mandela came out of prison, I was looking for 7 international experts to help him create black businesses. I was selected as one of them. And in 1994, the Time International magazine voted me as one of the most influential 100 leaders in the world. This is 1994. 100 most influential leaders in the world. This is 1994, way before we all got into serious politics. And along my nomination was somebody like Bill Gates. Remember, 1994, Bill Gates had just started 2 years. And if in 1994 they were comparing myself and Bill Gates and somebody like Condoleezza Rice, you may economist there, this is 1994, and they compare me with Bill Gates, then in all humility, I'm making a passionate appeal to Ghanaians that vote for Alan because I have the record of performance. To conclude that, in 2013, African heads of state, all Africa heads of states, voted for me to become a candidate for the Director General of the World Trade Organization. I became Africa's candidate for the position of Director General WTO. This is 2013, even outside government. The WTO Director General is one of the top 4 global positions. One is Secretary General, United Nations, where Kofi Annan was. 2, Managing Director, IMF. 3, the President of the World Bank. 4, Director General of WTO. So if in 2013, heads of states of Africa had the confidence in me to nominate me to contest to become one of the most powerful positions in the world, then again, in all humility, trust me, I'm a safe hand, the safest pair of hands that you can get at this period of our history, which is very turbulent. In the light of all the above, again, I'm making this special appeal to the people of Ghana to vote for Alan, to vote for change, and Ghana will rise again. God bless our home.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's his 20 minutes with Alan Kyerematen. We'll go for a quick break. When we return, we'll move into the questioning segment. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Election 2024. All too soon, Ghana is ready for an all-important national exercise, Election 2024.
So we'll bring you live discussions, live coverage of the elections, and update you on events from the camps of all the political parties. On top of that, bring you facts and figures of the results from the constituencies.
From all 16 regions of the country, our correspondents will bring you spot-on, real-time report on Election 2024. We will leave no stone unturned, no sand concealed.
We are the voice of the people and the future of our nation. Stay informed, stay engaged, and follow GBC News election coverage 2024. For us, every vote counts.
With our in-depth analysis of the voting pattern in your constituencies, swing constituencies, strongholds, and the world banks, you will want to stay with GBC News throughout the entire election period.
We put accuracy before speed. So, for reliable, dependable, verified, and uncontestable results, your best bet is GBC News. I am Cyril Furi.
I am Gloria Anderson.
I am George Sapo.
I am Thelma Taki.
I am Maurice Ogbete.
I am Doreen Ampofo.
Election 2024.
Ghana wins.
Hi, this is GBC Client Service.
Hello, thank you for calling.
GBC provides you the platform to amplify your brand reach. When you advertise on our 7 TV channels
And 18 regional and district radio stations across the country.
please reach our sales department at sales@gbcghanaonline.com and telephone numbers 0303 959604 and 0303 959605.
For all customer care issues, reach us by email care@gbcghanaonline.com and on telephone.
GBC, still the most authentic voice.
And this is the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. It's our 2024 presidential encounters where we sit down with presidential candidates contesting for the 2024 general election, get their plans, get their visions, get their policies for you to understand and, of course, make a decision. And today, our guest is with us here, Alan Kyerematen, who is with the Movement for Change. He's had his 20 minutes, and we're going to move into the questioning segment. I'll ask 1 or 2 questions, after which I'll hand over to Doreen. And our guests are also here in the studio, where they'll have the opportunity to ask broadcasting questions, just for you to also understand that we are live on GTV, we are live on GBC News, we are live on Obonu TV, we are live on Unique FM, and of course live on 18 radio stations across the 16 regions of this country. We are live on Facebook, GTV Ghana, and of course the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, and GTV Ghana 2 on Facebook. On YouTube, it's the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. We are also live on all our Kyerematen platforms across all digital platforms too, and then live on YouTube, which is Afafranto TV. So Kyerematen, let's start off. I mean, I was going through your transformational plan, and there's a part that interests me because at least we are hosting here in GBC. So there's a GBC interest question here, which is under media. You stated that introduce public-private partnership in the ownership and management of all state media organizations. How are you actually going to do that, having GBC in mind?
Yeah. You know, first, GBC needs to understand that they will never have the capacity to mobilize enough resources to capitalize their operations. Forget about it. I mean, governments that may seem to give you the impression that they will give you the budget to expand your facilities, to be able to bring in new personnel with competitive compensation. It ain't going to happen because the country does not have that kind of money. So that is why to keep a public broadcaster going and to make that public broadcaster like GBC competitive, no longer a public broadcaster. But by all means, bring a private sector participation on terms that will first guarantee your survival, particularly your financial sustainability, guarantee the capacity to attract and retain qualified personnel, guarantee your capacity to be able to build the kind of technology and broadcast infrastructure that will make you competitive. You have no option but to do that. Please let us not follow the models of other public broadcasting companies like the BBC. Even then, if you get into the real details of their operations, you find that they are getting closer to what I'm advising. Don't hold on to something which you are not capable of sustaining. I mean, do you know the land space available here in GBC alone? How is it that these smaller private media houses can compete with GBC? You know, so that would be my view.
Okay.
I want to state that before I become president.
Okay.
Because if I become president, GBC will be a great broadcasting house.
So the introduction of the private participation is mainly for funding issues.
No, and then I said a number of things.
Okay.
I said for funding, bringing in quality personnel to sustain and retain them. And then also the technology and transfer of technology. And all those things cost money. All those
so mainly it's
cost
got to do with funding.
Yes, basically.
So why not actually get a different funding model to support the public service broadcaster rather than getting the private person to come in?
You know, I've talked to a few people in GBC. They keep on talking about this finding a financing model. It's not going to happen. If it would have happened, it would have happened by now. Let's face the realities. Everybody in GBC keeps on talking, oh, they don't want to give. What are you holding on to? What are you holding on to? And they keep on talking about this. I'm not surprised that you've brought this because, oh, let's find a different financing. Who has constrained you in finding this different financing model over the years? If it was possible, it would have happened. I mean, generally, this is, and you don't lose anything. It's because still, it depends on the corporate governance architecture that you put in place. It also depends on the criteria that you use for bringing in these private sector partners. So there are so many entry points for making this a viable option.
Let's move in some of the things you talked about. You talked about having 100,000 health screening booths. What's the difference between your health screening booths and the chip compounds that we have?
Yeah, you see, the chip compounds are, I would say, health facilities in the remotest of village and rural communities. So they are not doing screening. They are doing, it's almost like smaller clinics, but in rural communities. This is, remember, it's health screening. So diagnosis and then referrals. So a young graduate or non-graduate who signs up to become an owner of this health booth will do your normal test because he has the monitor and everything. And you know, there are reference ranges. If your results suggest that you are hypertensive, then the first step is to refer you to the general practitioner, the GP in your area. And then the GP will not take that up. And then also then do further diagnosis based on the recommendations from the health booth. And then on that basis, will either give you first-line treatment or make a referral to a tertiary hospital. So it is incremental. This is incremental and progressive healthcare
okay, all right.
delivery.
Let's talk about trading. I mean, that's your field a lot. I mean, we have AFTA already, and that competitive edge globally when it comes to trading. I mean, we talk a lot about gold, we talk a lot about cocoa, but if you play within that space, you realize that other countries are also getting closer to us with these two strong communities. So which areas would you focus so that will give Ghana that competitive edge globally in the trading space? Having AFTA also
when you start talking about trading, you are really getting into my area.
Yes.
Because most people may not know this, but I was the chief architect and lead negotiator for the African Continental Free Trade Area. I designed and led the execution of the African Continental Free Trade Area. This is basically a major development in Africa. It's just that sometimes if you blow your own trumpet in Ghana, they say, oh, the man is boasting. But this is a major feat, you know. And interestingly, after making this happen, I became Minister for Trade under Nana Akufo-Addo's government. And then I campaigned to bring the headquarters of the AFCFTA to Ghana.
Okay.
So, I mean, as for trade, I know it inside out, but there's domestic trade and there's export trade. Let me start dealing with domestic trade. Domestic trade is a major component for economic recovery because whether we like it or not, 70 to 80% of Ghanaians are involved in commerce, particularly the women. I like to support women. 70 to 80% of people are engaged in commerce.
Yes.
So we have to look at the kind of things that will make them survive. Number one, access to financing. And that is why I have made a commitment. One of the first commitments that I will execute is to establish a traders bank. A traders bank. And that will provide cheap credit for all the people who are engaged in commerce. Because most traders will never have access to any serious financing from any of the banks. And it's also a major entry point for financial inclusion. Can you imagine? I mean, it will become the biggest bank, either by assets or whichever way you describe it. But beyond that, it's also our, what I would call market infrastructure. The conditions in the market. Frankly, I always pity our women. You know, I mean, when it rains, when there's heat, conditions are so bad. So also building new market infrastructure. And I'm committed to build these new modern market infrastructure all over the country.
Okay.
And we'll have kindergarten in it, we'll have small hospitals or clinics in it, and we'll have modern lorry terminals attached to. You don't go to the market, I say, you don't look like...
I go to the market.
You go to the market,
yes, I go to the
but you
market.
see the conditions there,
Yes.
all over the country. Now, I think beyond that also is just making sure that we bring them into mainstream economic activity because most of them are involved in the informal sector. And once their businesses grow, then we can transition them into formal businesses. And then they will have access to more services from government. So have they become the, I would say, the channel for distributing made in Ghana goods.
Okay.
I mean, you don't expect made in Ghana goods to be champion in other countries. The starting point is making sure that commerce, domestic commerce works. And then they will start putting premium on made in Ghana goods. But the export is equally important. In fact, the key to stabilizing our local currency is to export more. For the last, 60 years, I haven't heard any head of state in Ghana talk seriously about exports. Have you? But this is the key to our economy.
The argument usually
exports,
is within industrialization.
Exports. Yes, but you have to produce to be able to export. So we are unable to export because there's no production. And there's no production because we don't take industrialization seriously. So first we have to produce, and we have to produce competitively. The prices must be good, and the infrastructure to export must also be there. For the first time in the history of our country, for many years, during my time as Minister for Trade, we had a trade surplus, meaning that we're exporting more than we're importing. And for me, I've made a commitment that by 2030, we would be generating not less than $30 billion in export revenue. Currently, it's hovering around $2 million, $4 million. Yes.
All right. Which specific areas like this, or products or commodities, would you focus on to give us that kind of edge and even help us achieve that $30 billion as you're talking about?
So there are a variety of crops. So I've identified 10 strategic sectors where we will develop the productive base and export. So the agro industry obviously is one. Remember, I started the President's Special Initiatives, PSI, on cassava. And I can tell you, just transforming cassava alone into different products can give us not less than $10 billion every year. Oil palm, that was also one of the PSIs. Malaysia, they learned how to cultivate oil palm in Ghana in the 60s. Malaysia earns not less than $20 billion from oil palm and oil palm products alone.
What is called the red gold.
The red gold. Salt, which was another of the PSIs, that is called white gold. So there's red gold and there's white gold, So if you look at agro-processing, it's a major export earner. If you look at garments and textiles, Bangladesh earns $30 billion every year. Just sewing clothes. And I introduced the Friday wear. We can brand our our local fabrics internationally, and it will be a major export revenue. So if Bangladesh earns $30 billion just from the export of garments, so there you go. I started, before I left government, I introduced legislation and policies that is now making it possible for us to assemble vehicles in Ghana. I'm not sure you're aware of this, but right now we are producing or assembling Toyota, Nissan, Suzuki, Peugeot, Kia, Hyundai, all within 1.5 years. So you can understand the impact of policy. I didn't need to go and borrow. It's just through the right policies, and all these investors are coming. And remember, it's not just for foreign investors. Kantanka has tripled his production when I introduced this new policy. And you can see the new range of Kantanka vehicles. It's all because, so I could go on. And pharmaceuticals. Ghana imports 70% of pharmaceutical, 70%. And we have basically pharmaceutical companies that can triple this production if we provide support to the pharmaceutical.
Okay.
So I could go on and on.
Just before Doreen comes in, just one question. I mean, you talk about trade. The next thing you're also thinking about is got to do with taxes. What do you make of Ghana's tax regime, and what would you do different about it?
First, it's too high. Secondly, in terms of the structure and regime of tax, it's completely wrong. We've turned it upside down. And it's amazing that we have so many professionals in this country, and we're running this tax regime for how many years now? For decades. In every serious country. The taxes are taxes, duties on import duties and things like that. Direct taxes is on corporate income and personal income. Typical of Ghanaians. Because it is easy for us to charge, taxes and duties on imports, because Ghanaians like to import. So once they import, you put the duties there, they have no choice, they will pay.
They have to pay, yeah.
You understand me? So duties on imports. So for businesses, making them competitive, so if they make money and they are paying taxes, they don't have a problem. But you want to kill the companies before they make... Have you looked at the tax regime, even under MPP government? That seems to be suggesting that they are pro-business. It's to the ports. Over 40 different charges, taxes. Normally, when they realize that that's the way, if the levy also becomes too high, they introduce charges.
Yeah.
All kinds of ripping off, all kinds of ripping off, business people. Just because they have a lazy orientation, so much revenue. So if we are able to, do you know how much money we lose in corruption in the delivery of every service? And the usual 10%, 20%, So people have, especially NDC and MPP, practice.
Okay.
So taxes have to come down. And I've committed that I'll have the lowest tax.
You talked about this current administration that is supposed to be pro-business, and yet the taxes is that high. You talked about the role you played in this administration before you actually left. Why should we actually trust you that you're going to give us the lowest tax regime when you were part of that regime that has given us, that is supposed to be pro-business, but yet the taxes doesn't reflect that pro-business aspect of it?
People ask this question all the time. And it is being influenced by propagandists within the MPP. Oh, he was part of us, so how can he be talking like that? There's a difference between collective responsibility and individual accountability. Listen to it very well. There's a difference between collective responsibility and individual accountability. If you ask me to account for what I was supposed to do, the evidence is there. One district, one factory, the AFCFTA. I introduced it. We have the for decades, So if you ask me to account for what I was supposed to do, the evidence is clear. But MPP, they are still campaigning. Why not then say that if something was going wrong in the...
But you were part of the administration.
No, but so you have not, George, it means you've not understood the principle
I get collective,
yes. I'm saying that. So you cannot execute the kind of policies. And at any rate, remember, I was the first to put out my national policy blueprint. It's not a manifesto. If you read the risk of sounding boastful, there's no comparison. Look, we're going to deal with the economy. For me, it's all about the economy, because you see, when the economy fails, it affects everybody. You may have a road built for you. So what about those people who don't have Agenda 111? So the key is the economy, because the economy affects everybody.
Okay.
And that is why I think that this thing, people going around, but Allah was part. In fact, the reason why I'm the best person to lead is the fact that I've been there. I know. If you bring a totally new person, he doesn't understand how government works. So how can you trust him? But if you look at my record in government, as I said, both locally and internationally, then you won't argue, as it's all propaganda.
I think it's a fair question.
It's
unlike being described as propaganda. It's very much of a fair question.
Do you understand what propaganda is?
I do.
Yes.
I do, but it's just pretty much a fair question.
No, it's a fair question, but I'm explaining to you that, you see, because unfortunately, some people become very vulnerable. Please.
Okay.
We should forget
so
about
this. Then you have the opportunity to address that vulnerability too.
I understand.
So let's move to Doreen now. Doreen will take us through questions from our guest here.
Thank you so much, George, for this opportunity. So before we even take the questions, let me remind ourselves that we have representation from the TUC, National Peace Council, NAGRAD, students from the Ghana Institute of Journalism, More Hope for Disabled Foundation, Greater Accra Markets Association, and OT Youth Training, Empowerment, and Agriculture. So as usual, when you have any questions, just please signal me. I'll bring the microphone to you. You mention your name, where you're coming from, and then you go ahead with your question. But I will start with mine. Mr. Kyerematen, the issue about taxes and the fact that there's a collective responsibility and individual responsibility.
Individual accountability.
Individual accountability, yes. You are not just any minister. You are the Minister of Trade and Industry, under whose remit these businesses were under. So if there were any taxes coming up, you would have been part of the decision-making. It was not just a collective something. You would have played a key role in accepting that these taxes should be implemented. Hold on to the response to that. I'll take 2 more questions and then go ahead and answer.
You don't want me to answer immediately. She wants to mix it up. So that
but there's a note part just by your side.
It was from OT region.
From OT region.
I'm speaking on behalf of this new agric, as you said, and then youth empowerment. Farmers are still using the 19th century way of farming. And how can your government help some of us, youth like this, to go in for big machines, to go into massive agric production? Thank you.
Okay, Fios, thank you.
So, she has a question.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Salma, a student at Unimac Institute of Journalism and also a student coordinator at Youth NREG. My question is that you were with NPP, and that is where all of us, most of us know you were. And looking at our setting, when somebody gives you an opportunity to grow or build yourself, we believe that you have to extend or give back to that person. And looking at the time you left the party, it was almost about 3 months or a few months to election. It looks like you left them where I believe they needed you most. So what shows that if we vote you into power come December 7, you will not leave us at a time we also need you most. And my second question is about affirmative action bill. Looking at our cultural setting, women are seen as they belong to the kitchen. Even sometimes when people have certificates and some credentials that they deserve a job, they are not given the job because they don't belong to a certain political party or so. So when it comes to power, are you going to ensure that the affirmative action bill continues? And how are you going to make sure that its implementation becomes a success? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Kyerematen, you'd answer those questions and then we'll take another batch of questions.
Okay.
Very well. So first is to you, Doreen. Doreen, your question about taxes. Just for your enlightenment, the decisions about the imposition of taxes is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance. Period. I mean, we can all make contributions to that decision, but it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Finance or the Minister of Finance. And as I keep on saying, I can make all the suggestions, I can make all the proposals, and the evidence is there. You can read up supporting the growth of the private sector. I am always pro-business, and I argue relentlessly with all the powers at my disposal to ensure that we lower taxes, because that's the only way I can get my work. The requirements of economic growth and sustained economic growth. Obviously, you'll be looking for more revenue. Yeah. And so I can understand why they will always be pushing for higher taxes, because in their view, they think that the higher, that's the way it works. That's the way it works. Everybody knows. In fact, the reason why the One District, One Factory was so successful and made such a strong and compelling case that, look, can you imagine the impact of every district in this country having one major industrial establishment that can employ hundreds of people. You wouldn't need anybody to leave their district to go and find job in the cities. You know, and it's one of the, I think, the best industrial interventions since independence. But then I made a compel to establish a factory in their community instead of Tema. You need to provide incentives. Yes. You need to give them lower taxes. So I have always made strong arguments for this. But I'm saying that the Minister of Finance may have a different view, and this is exactly what happens. He wants more revenue, not realizing that if he listens to the kind of things that I am talking about, he will, in the long run, have more companies that are doing well, and then the revenue from corporate tax will be higher than the revenue that they are talking about. Okay. Doreen, I hope you are.
I'm not entirely convinced.
Yeah, you won't be convinced because you don't understand maybe.
Well, so what I meant to say is that you played a key role. Not that you were the main decider, but you played a key role.
Doreen, just this last point, because I think, to be fair, we should allow those who are represented here. I've explained to you the difference between the principle of collective responsibility and are you in all honesty suggesting that Alan Kyerematen had the greater influence on the financial economic management of a country than Dr. Bawumia and then Ken Ofori-Atta?
Let's face it. You are the Minister of Trade and Industry.
Let's face it. You see, the moment you insist, then it means that you're interested in pushing a certain line of, because it means the direction of our economy and our finance than the Vice President and then the Minister of Finance. Okay. If your answer is yes, then I have nothing to say. I rest my case.
Let's go to Pius Agric, yes.
I'm very happy that you raised this issue. Because whether you like it or not, the surveillance has been counterproductive for a number of reasons. And I want to just take a minute for Agric to be revolutionized. Number one, it has to be market-driven. Okay. Meaning that you cannot just be producing for production sales. It has to meet certain market demands, either domestic or external. It has to be on economies of scale. Smallholder farming for subsistence agriculture is great. We can never run away from that. But that cannot be the key to an agricultural revolution. They are not mutually exclusive though. But you have to even transition small farmer holdings into large scale. That is when the economies of scale would come in. The last one is when you bring value to farmers. If farmers don't optimize the value to themselves from farming, obviously they won't put in that maximum attention. So the key is expanding production. And to expand production, one, you have to mechanize. Yes. You see, this run by Ministry of Agric, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So under an Alan Kyerematen presidency, I'm going to establish the most powerful farmers union, Ghana Union of Farmers. This is all the umbrella association of farmers. Now, government is going to provide the seed capital for them to establish all these mechanization centers owned by them. So they have an interest in making sure that it works. Again, on work and pay. What is the value of government if you cannot support farmers to own, but not to be owned by government or district assembly? So if the farmers, their own association, they are supported by government to own tractors, how do you call this? Rice, combined harvesters and all these things. Then it will be possible to provide easy access to farmers to mechanize, because that is the key. Irrigation is key. Now, it means that we have sources of water, particularly in the north, but we have not understood the need to be able to channel these river bodies into agriculture. And also, there are areas where, just because of the climate, they don't have rainfall throughout the year. If Alan Kyerematen becomes president, I'm going to bring in the cutting-edge technology to produce rain. But you say, because it is happening in investment. No. I have it all sewn up. It's happening in their vast countries. Yeah. But if you go to the deserts, all these countries that we are running to, sometimes they don't even have rain for a whole year. There's technology that can produce rain. You know, Alan Kyerematen will produce rain in Ghana. Yes. And it's very simple. Least cost. It's not even expensive.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Then Salma. Salma asks 2 questions. The first one has got to do with your affiliation with the NPP and when you left.
Yes.
When they needed you, according to Salma.
Unfortunately, maybe because of Salma's age, she may not have the history of NPP. I was a founding member of NPP from 1992. I was the chairman of a group called the Young Executive Forum, which was the financing arm of the NPP. At that time, the professionals, the businessmen, the young people who really mattered in society at that time, who were brave and courageous enough to stand against Rawlings at that time. Because we are businessmen, we're on our own, professionals. All of them, I was their chairman. Name every person you can think of here in NPP. I was their boss, I was their chairman. My secretary was former Minister of Finance, Kwadwo. You know, this is chairman of the Young Executive Forum. I've been a member of the National Council, all the high decision bodies at that time. In 1996, the Young Executive Forum actually nominated me to contest against President Kwadwo here because they felt that they needed a certain type of people who convinced me that I should allow them to go. And then later I can come. I said, no problem. Okay. Me, I have time. Leaders of the party, any name you can think of. The current president was one of them. Dr. Adukufo was one of them. Osafo Mafo, Michael Kwe, Hakmausa Jamai, all these big people. 17 leading members of the party. When we finally went to Legon, there were only 2 of us left.
Yes.
Nana Akufo-Addo and myself.
Yes.
You understand me?
Yes.
I decided that the party had become so disintegrated that going into another round of elections, my fear was that it will actually lead to further disintegration. So I decided myself that since he's older than I am, I would support him. We don't need to go into a second round to break the party. I mean, this is the measure of supreme sacrifice since that time. And after that, even though I contest with the president, he himself will attest to this. I'm the single person who is able to campaign with him throughout the country. So, unfortunately, what's your name again?
Salma.
Salma. If there's anybody who can make there are people now, I don't want to mention names on OPR, young people who have come into the party, now talking big. When, as we say in Ghana, when we were where were they? They were even in school. These are our children. You understand? Some of my own people feel that I stayed too long in the party. I was too patient. But that's the mark of a statesman. That's the mark of leadership, you know. And so that is why I came out at a time that no serious person in MPP can make a claim against me. No serious person.
Okay.
You know. So I bid my time, and I left at the right time. And that is why people believe in my message. Forget about the MPP; it's a declining party. You know. So, and then she made. She also talking about affirmative action. Yeah. I'm happy about your desire to ensure that the affirmative action bill comes into force.
I think it's a law now.
It's a law now, but she was talking about the implementation.
Yes.
I'm saying that I'm also a firm believer in the implementation, execution of that, you know. Many years ago, when I started training and building entrepreneurs, my record is there. I mean, sometimes you don't want to mention this in public, but I can say boldly on air that 60% of all the thriving local businessmen, they all came through my hands, both men, women, you know. And at that time, I did what I call positive action for women, because I deliberately identified women and brought them into my program.
Okay.
And they were like high flyers. So I believe in women, and I believe in affirmative action.
All right, Dory, let's take the next one.
We have
3 questions, and I can understand Mr. Kyerematen's zeal and information just for us to get to know what he's doing and all that. But if we can actually have that briefly so that we can have more questions taken within the time that we have. Yes, Dory.
So we have a gentleman here.
Thank you. My name is Franklin, the General Secretary for Health Services Workers Union from TUC. My brother, we are talking about minimum wage, living wage, and a single spine that is not able to take workers home. What would be your policy? Are you going for a minimum wage as we have now? Or you want to give us a living wage that will take us home? We want to know your policy.
Okay.
Then you spoke about health boots, and you spoke about the fact that you're going to use SSS graduates. As we speak today, we have about 4 badges of trained nurses and trained allied health professionals in the house. They're already trained. Are we going to put our health in the hands of SS graduates who are not trained, or to these trained people who are in the house? Is it because you want cheap labor or what? Then your policy that you spoke about financing, excuse me, from TUC, give me the opportunity to find out. This is brief. Yeah, but this is brief. You were talking about PPP, public-private partnership.
Yes.
This is a pure capitalist model that looks at profit over the people. Why won't you keep public, and encourage private to be private? Thank you.
Thank you so much for
You get to understand this one because it's coming from TUC.
I'll come back to you. I already signaled some people, so hold for me. I'll come back to you.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Flagbearer, my name is Dominic Moji. I'm from the Ghana Journalists Association. Media freedom and safety of the journalist. What will you do to ensure the protection of journalists, especially investigative journalists? You talked about setting up anti-corruption or corruption overload. Why will you want to add to the existing anti-corruption institutions rather than strengthening the existing ones?
Thank you so much for that question. So, Mr. Kyerematen, I think you have like 5 questions already.
Okay.
So I would leave you to answer those. Please keep it short so we can take some more questions.
So George and then
Doreen,
please stop talking about keeping it short. Because you see, look, me, I'm a substantive person.
Yeah.
If you don't have time,
I get to understand that. I get to understand that.
When they ask questions,
yes.
Remember, we are speaking to the whole of Ghana. They deserve and they need a proper explanation. Not this flighty, you go and ask a politician and they just policy on the go.
On the go.
I don't do that. Anyway,
that's fair enough. So, frankly,
minimum
wage or living wage?
Mr. TUC man, I'll give you a minimum wage which is a living wage. You've understood it. It answers the question. I'll give you a minimum wage problem. I'll give you a minimum wage which is a living wage. And I can assure you that under my presidency, this minimum wage, which cannot even guarantee decent life for anybody, is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And before I make those commitments, of course, I'm not in the business of just making a promise, but I can guarantee you that under my presidency, my minimum wage will be a living wage. Okay. I think that should satisfy you. Yes.
And then talk about
George, how is it that right now, do you know that you cannot spend less than 50 cedis on a meal, on a decent meal?
I know.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, I'm in Ghana.
So let us be practical. 50 cedis, you don't have 50 cedis, you can't have a decent meal. And that's even just for one meal.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about a living wage and you compare it to the minimum wage, you must understand my principle. So please keep that principle in mind. Then you're talking about, it's unfortunate that maybe you just picked on that recommendation. But my proposals to revolutionize the health sector goes beyond that. You're talking about nurses, and I'll give you just 5 entry points for that.
Okay.
Now, we are going to ensure that we enhance the level of public health infrastructure. Tertiary level, secondary level, and the primary level. The primary level is what you talked about, the CHIPS compounds. Then the secondary level, polyclinics, and then community clinics. But that's all public. And before you get to the tertiary level, and there are 2 grades of the tertiary level. There are specialist hospitals and there are ordinary tertiary levels. You know. So from the public sector point of view, we are going to expand all that. So that's one entry point for trained nurses now to be able to get into serious employment. Number 2 is that because of this whole paradigm of bringing in private sector to finance infrastructure, under my presidency, I'm going to introduce a new policy of developing community privately owned hospitals.
Okay.
Privately owned community hospitals, which means that somebody who has just finished medical school, together with a couple of nurses from different disciplines, I intentionally will pull them together, establish private companies for them, and will provide seed funding for them to construct, operate, and then manage these community hospitals. So you can imagine that every community will now have a very decent hospital owned by the health professionals themselves. Because it's on work and pay basis. Government has access to cheap money. And so we do a standard design for a community hospital, invite doctors and other health professionals now to become part of this. So they own the hospital on a work and pay basis. So all the nurses that are sitting at home is either you go into this expanded public sector health infrastructure or you go into these newly constructed community hospitals. 3, you have these health booths. But remember, when we talk about SHS or tertiary graduates, what does it take to measure somebody's blood pressure? What does it take?
You need to understand how the machine works.
Oh, George.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you mean somebody who has finished SHS?
Well, the person needs
somebody,
to
a domestic, no.
Just to get the right reading.
So all I'm saying is that they are not doing investigative consultation. This is just measuring your blood pressure, something that is supposed to be done at home. But you don't expect everybody to be able to have a monitor. It's just providing access. Does it make sense that you want to measure your blood pressure, you have to go to Kolebu to go and get a card for a doctor to see you just to check and say you have hypertension? It doesn't make sense. So what I'm saying is that the reason why I'm saying that this is entry-level health screening, you know, and all these nurses, when I went to, on my recent caravan tour, just 2 days ago, I went to Beach, one of the communities, and I went to see the health, it's a health college. They were so enthused about this because now they realize 100,000 health booths. If I finish my training and I'm able to get and own one of these health booths, something that I can own, that is a major, so they're excited about it. But apart from that, I'm also going to establish what we call the Ghana Skills Export Program.
Okay.
And what this means is that there's a large demand for healthcare personnel all over the country. And because of the quality of our training in healthcare in Ghana, people like health professionals from Ghana. So it is going to be part of Ghana's health delivery program. Now to train nurses and other healthcare professionals to feed into this export opportunity, but under a structured program. So you go 2-3 years, you expand your knowledge, and then you come back, maybe to your community hospital or to your health or something else.
Okay.
So there are all these entry points for those nurses who are sitting at home.
All right.
Yes.
He talked about, he actually didn't like the idea of the public-private partnership.
Yes.
It can actually be public-public partnership.
Yeah, they are not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
And what I'd like to suggest to my brother from TUC is that please let us move away. And I really want to have a deep engagement with the TUC. See, the labor unions in any competitive economy, because I'm talking about building an enterprise economy. That is the only way out for Ghana. Building an enterprise economy where business is the foundation, not government. Government just supports them, because that's the only way we can create jobs. You can't have an enterprise economy that is seeking only to promote PPP. How is that possible? You want to have an enterprise economy, and you are promoting public-public partnership. Okay. So public-private partnership with the right government regulation and oversight is the best model for job creation. Maybe the way it's been done before may have created a certain mistrust about private sector participating in public sector. But to be honest with you, we have no choice.
Okay.
That's the way to go.
Dominic on media freedom, safety of journalists.
Yes. Now, I'm happy that this has come up. And I'm saying this, I think with all the respect that I have for people in the media. What is going on in the media space now is very serious. In fact, the media in Ghana are supposed, not only in Ghana, everywhere in the world, they are supposed to be the watchdogs for democracy. In fact, that's why they are said to be the fourth estate of the realm. Instead of being watchdogs, they are now attacking dogs against democracy. I have to say clearly.
Attacking dogs against democracy?
Against democracy.
Well, how do you mean?
Because, for example, we are in this competition. If you look at the reportage, as if those of us who are, and I don't even call myself an independent candidate. I call myself a non-partisan presidential candidate. Because I'm saying that I want to build a government of national unity. For me, it is about Ghana, how we move Ghana forward. If you're an NDC person in parliament and you can get the job done, I'll use you. If you're an MPP person, you can get the job done, I'll use you. If you're not part of any political party and you are the best person, I'll use you. That, for me, is the driving force, So, frankly, the fact that right now the media landscape has become politicized, and it's very clear, instead of they being watchdogs, they are attacking bulldogs now against democracy. And you find a situation where a seasoned journalist, because he has access to a program, goes on air, because basically he's been given some little posts, says that he has heard policies from NDC and MPP. Alan Kyerematen, we've not heard even one policy from him. When I was the first to literally adore the Great Transformational Plan, not a manifesto. So he's a paid agent. He's a paid agent. And frankly, I don't want to put all journalists in that basket. But the image that you are carving for yourselves in the media is not a good one. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. It's only the two big parties who are behind this. They will definitely not feel the same way. But those of us who are watching the media space, that's what it seems. You hear about NDC, you hear about MPP, we all go into the field And you know, and sometimes you can see literally they are blocking you
from having access to the media.
There's no doubt
who's
about
blocking?
it. I don't want
Those
us
two
to
big
get
parties or the media itself.
I don't want to get into I don't want us to get into a debate about this. You understand?
I get that, yes.
So, but basically,
just wanted
this is my
clarification,
observation.
okay.
This is my observation,
Okay.
and we have to watch it.
All right.
Because, you know, for example, the media, the three basic principles for journalism is to inform, educate, and entertain. That's what you are supposed to do. Instead of informing, you are misinforming. There's so much misinformation, you know. And then instead of educating, they are not even doing, because, for example, if you are doing serious journalism, serious journalism, I've come out with my GTP. I've not heard any serious comparison between the manifestos and my GTP. You understand me? Because that is where the education comes in. Information is reporting. And then education is doing analysis and educating the public. Have you had any serious, I would say, debate or comparison about the GTP? No. So, I don't want us to get into this, but I feel that if Alan becomes president, because journalism and the media is so close to my heart, I will change a lot of things first in terms of the private media. Because that's where I think you can escalate the importance of the media. That's number one. Helping private sector media houses also to capitalize them so that they can now compete. Secondly, also training, capacity building for journalism. By now, we should have journalists who are specializing in financial sector management, in economy, in agriculture. You know, I'm not saying nothing like that is being done, but that is where the future of journalism is.
Okay, all right. And then he talked about why not strengthen the existing corrupting fighting institutions rather than introducing a new one?
Because it's not working.
The existing ones are not working.
The existing ones are not working because there are about 6-7 different pieces of legislation and enactments that all seem to be dealing with corruption. So there's no single definition for corruption. You go to OSP, OSP has its definition of corruption. What OSP may classify as corruption, you go to Yoko. Yoko is saying that according to their definition, this is not corruption. So so the first thing to do is now to consolidate all provisions in existing legislation that deal with corruption into one enabling legislation. That's the first thing. You can't have corruption-related provisions in 10 different pieces of legislation. So once you consolidate, then you have one enabling legislation dealing with corruption. Then based on that enabling legislation, you introduce one overlord. That's what we call a czar. When we say a czar, it means a very powerful person. Now, as I indicated in my earlier remarks, this czar will have independent prosecutorial authority. Because if you look at the Constitution, whatever creation that you bring into being, they will still have to have delegated authority from the Attorney General. That if you have authority from the Attorney, can you prosecute the President or his ministers of state? Obviously, it becomes difficult. So I'm going to separate the office of this czar from the office of the Attorney General and make it truly independent.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We'll pick the next batch of questions. Yes.
Our friends from the Ghana National Association for the Deaf have a question, and he would try to tell us what he wants to say, and then we'll get the interpretation.
So, as a person with disability, we have been working on fighting for the UN CRPD, that is the United Nations Consent for Rights for Persons with Disability, which Ghana signed on to, I think somewhere in 2016. But when it comes to the implementation in Ghana, persons with disability have been fighting over this back and forth since 2016 till now. So I want to know, if you become president, what are you going to do about that so that persons with disability in Ghana will be able to enjoy their rights as also citizens of the country?
Thank you for that question. We'll take some questions on this side. Unfortunately, because of time, we may be having a final round of questions, so please bear with me.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable.
Yes, sir.
I'm Michael from Nagrat. We are glad to hear you talk about mental health, but that was under your social services cluster in health. But for education, would you consider are seriously in trouble? And then I want to put all the questions, all the problems in education in one sentence. The capping of GET fund is our problem. Would you want to uncap it? How soon can it be done when you become president?
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much. Please, my name is Dr. Kyerematen, and also from Nagrat. My question is, in your submission, you mentioned bringing about the assembling of vehicles. What strategies or plans will you put in place to ensure teachers are able to acquire such vehicles? Because we used to have the tax waiver, which is no more. The next one is, what will you do to address the issue of overcrowding in our schools to make the teacher deliver well? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Because this is our last round, I'll take a final question. Please keep it very brief.
Thank you very much. Kwesi Renchi Boatin is my name, National Peace Council. I've seen the GTP plan, and I've seen the 5. Realize that the area of all this peace architecture is a bit missing in it. I'd like to ask Honorable what he intends to do with regards to our peace architecture to ensure peace and in our country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Mr. Kyerematen, please.
Right. Before you quickly come in, to our viewers who are watching us on GTV, when it's 15 minutes actually to 10, we'll be going off GTV. You can quickly switch off to GBC News, or you can follow us on all our social media platforms. And for those listening to us on radio, we're still going to be on radio. But when it's 15 minutes to 10 on GTV, if you're watching us on GTV, when it's 15 minutes to 10, you can just quickly switch off or switch over to GBC News for the continuation of this particular program. Thank you. So we can go on, sir.
And I'll make this very quickly.
Yes.
First, on the PWDs, and I have a very sentimental attachment to ensuring that PWDs have fair and equitable access, to all the facilities. But first is to ensure that we fulfill all the requirements on our international, I would say, legislative and other commitments at the international level, because that was the point that you were making. We are not fulfilling our responsibilities under those international codes, and that would be the first thing. Secondly is to ensure equal access to job opportunities. You have to make it an affirmative action. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And my proposal would be actually to incentivize, because I'm talking about the enterprise economy. Alan becomes president, literally everything now is private sector rate, but with government oversight and regulation. So before you get access as a private sector operator and entrepreneur, there's part of the legislation that will provide, I would say, incentives to you to be able to engage people with disabilities. 3 is public and private institutions also becoming disability friendly, because there's an advocacy that is required. It doesn't happen automatically. So part of my agenda is the advocacy part to ensure that both public and private sector institutions are disability friendly. And once the advocacy is strong, it will touch their hearts and they will open up. Then the last one is incentives, again, to the private sector who employ people with disabilities. So basically, it's part of the earlier point that I made. Yeah.
Michael talked about prioritizing mental health for teachers.
I wasn't sure I understood exactly what he said, whether he meant that part of my agenda for mainstreaming mental health delivery should be applied to teachers. I want to be sure before somebody accuses me of saying that they need mental.
Let's have a microphone to Michael quickly, just for a quick clarification. Then
just to be very sure.
Yeah, just to be very sure.
Yes.
Yes, Michael.
Thank you. The reality is that the teachers in this country are under pressure. It brings about mental conditions that nobody cares about. We have psychosocial problems that nobody cares about. All that they care about is that the children must learn and pass. Lesson note. Teachers are not in the classroom, but they don't care to find out why is the teacher not in the classroom. This is becoming a big problem for us, and we're losing our teachers gradually. It's very important.
Now I understand.
Yes.
I will be a president who cares for teachers. No, frankly, because my mother is 104 years, and she was one of the most distinguished educationists in her time, from Achimota School to St. Monica's, you know. So somehow it's in our DNA. And I feel that people in education, in health, in the media, in particular, that's why I'm so passionate about this media thing, they must be given special recognition. You know, I will probably not go to the extent of saying that we are doing mental health screening for teachers, because what I'll do for them, all their challenges will disappear. Their challenges will disappear. So there'll be no need for that. No, I'm serious about this. I'm serious about this.
You talk about the capping of GET Fund.
The capping of GET Fund, it is right. See, the GET Fund, again, this is the challenge, at least with the current government, and also, frankly, with the NDC. We are using the GET Fund for all kinds of purposes, not for, the capping was to allow government now to limit the flow of funds into the GET Fund. I disagree with that policy, you know. So we'll make sure that they get the full benefit of the GET Fund levy. After all, we are charging those levies for purposes of capitalizing the GET Fund. Why should we deploy it to other things which have nothing to do with supporting education? So, as the French will say, nous sommes d'accord on that point. We are in agreement. Acquisition of
vehicles.
Yeah, acquisition of vehicles. Madam, I can assure you, part of the reason why I was so passionate about Ghana assembling vehicles is that once you have, can you imagine all these vehicles being assembled in Ghana? And the interesting thing is that Ghana is one of the few countries where major automobile companies are assembling not just one model, but 4 or 5 models. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. It's because the confidence they have in our policy and in the country. And so it will make it possible for what she's asking for to be done very easily, because there's a vehicle financing mechanism associated with the implementation of the assembly policy. So, Madam, vote for me, and I'll make sure that you get one of our vehicles, made in Ghana vehicles. And then
overcrowding in schools?
That is part of the review, the comprehensive review that I was talking about when I said I'll continue the free SHS, but there will be a comprehensive review based on certain criteria. I talked about financial stability. I talked about infrastructure requirements. The overcrowding is part of this infrastructure deficit, you know. And then also I talked about reviewing the teacher requirements for our educational. Because once you get into the tertiary, then it's a different matter. I think what she is referring to is essentially maybe secondary and maybe basic education. Yeah.
And then we see peace during this election.
Yes. As I'm sure Kwesi understands, there's a technical definition of peace, and you know what it is. So governance. Those are the two main elements for guaranteeing peace. Right now, you look at the challenge between the Supreme Court and that in itself, it's a major challenge, for peace. Now, once you get into also economic governance, because there's economic governance, there's social governance, there's political governance. Now, right now, for example, the lack of jobs, the level of unemployment in this country is a basic security challenge. And that would undermine peace if it is not handled carefully. So if you look at my GTP, there are elements of how I respond to this question of peace in all the 6 classes. But obviously, there's also a section on national security optimization. You see, I mean, it's such a wonderful document. If you take your time, there's a section on national security optimization. Currently, if you look at our security architecture vis-a-vis what is happening in the Sahelian countries, we are the only country that I would say, for now, is an oasis of peace. But because our intel and our recce operations, our reconnaissance of what is happening is weak, we do not appreciate the extent and the seriousness of what is happening in the region. Because right now, the infiltration into Ghana through our borders, and you know how Ghanaians are very receptive to foreigners. Everywhere we are receiving them, But I'm saying that as a country, we have to have a strategic understanding of the elements of what will guarantee peace. It's not just National Peace Council when it comes to elections, then people start talking about peace. Because that's the only time I really hear people talking passionately about peace. But peace goes beyond elections. The fundamental conditions in the country. When people have no hope, about where the economy is going. If you don't have a job for 5 years, you are still staying with your parents, you can't develop your own family, you have nowhere to lay your head. People can't even be guaranteed the basic conditions of life. Maslow's theory. I mean, so it's a very serious situation. But Ghanaians, as always, I don't know whether we are just tolerating it, but the answer for me is very simple. The NDC and the MPP, after 32 years in government, if they cannot deal with the basic fundamentals of social life, then on what basis are they asking us for an extension of power? I mean, for me, of course, I'm campaigning to become president, but I want the people of Ghana to think and reflect very seriously about this. Former President Mahama is a nice man. Dr. Bahuya is a nice man, but this is not about being nice. This is about...
But you're also a nice man.
Sorry?
You're also a nice man.
So this 3 nice men challenging themselves.
Yes.
So it comes back to 4 things now.
Okay.
Vision, because you are saying we are all nice.
But you're also nice.
Yes, so I'm saying we are all nice.
Yes.
So we have to look for some other criteria.
Yes. Aside the niceness.
Formulating the other 2.
Yes.
Vision, competence, integrity, and then your capacity to execute. I mean, if we are being honest, if not anything at all, at least we've seen what President Mahama will do. We cannot say in all sincerity that they've not done anything. But he's had his chance. We've seen what he can do. We are still in trouble. In the case of Dr. Bam, it's even worse because right now he is in power. We've seen what he can do. So Alan is the only one left, who can also show what he can do. Okay. And with my record, you see, the point is that the respect that I have outside this country in terms of what I can do to help others progress, I want to serve this country in the same way.
Okay.
So I want...
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
It's a pleasure.
And we're so grateful that you honored our invitation too. Yeah. And to our viewers and our listeners, thank you very much. And to our audience here in the studio, thanks a lot for also joining us this evening. You just keep a close eye on our social media platform. You get to know exactly who's coming next on Monday. I would like to thank Star Ghana for supporting this particular program. On behalf of the entire production team, of course, on behalf of Doreen too, thanks a lot for your time.
Doreen?
That's Doreen. Have a good night and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.
Ghana's peace, let's protect it. Ghana Sumbi, Yamohobai. Some